It was a typical Tuesday evening when I came home from work. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the neighborhood. My house, a modest two-story home with dark wooden floors and large windows, looked exactly like I remembered it. It was home, the place where I'd spent nearly a decade with my wife, Laura, and our 7-year-old daughter, Emma. There was a subtle serenity in the air as I stepped through the front door. The smell of freshly baked cookies lingered in the kitchen, a scent I associated with Laura's love for baking. I set down my briefcase, loosened my tie, and called out to her, "Laura." "Emma." Silence. Odd. Laura should have been home by now, and Emma was always in the living room, playing with her dolls. The absence of the usual sounds unsettled me, but I brushed it off. Maybe they were just in their rooms or out on a walk. I tossed my keys onto the counter and walked into the kitchen, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Everything seemed in order. A strange calm washed over me, but I didn't think much of it at the time. A few hours later my phone rang. "Mr. Harper." The voice on the other end was cold, professional. "This is St. Mary's Hospital. We're calling about your daughter, Emma. She's been brought in for an emergency." My heart skipped a beat. Panic set in as I slammed the phone down and rushed out the door. The drive to the hospital was a blur. I had no idea what had happened to her, but I prayed it wasn't serious. She had been fine when I'd left this morning. A bruise here and there, sure, but she'd been fine. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white as the hospital loomed closer. I burst through the emergency room doors, and the nurse led me to a sterile, white-walled room. There she was, Emma. Her face was battered, bruised, and streaked with tears. My breath caught in my throat as I rushed to her side. "Daddy." She sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. "I came home early. I didn't mean to, I didn't want to see it." I frowned, confused. "See what, honey?" "Mom. She was with Uncle Rick in your bed." Emma's words were broken, her sobs racking her tiny body. When I screamed, "They hurt me," threw me down the stairs. "They're still there, Dad. In the house, drinking your whiskey." The world tilted. Time seemed to stop as I absorbed the impact of her words. Laura, my wife, with Rick, the man I had trusted like a brother. My own flesh and blood. I thought back to the oddities over the past few months, late nights, hushed phone calls, distance between us. I had ignored the signs. I had been blind. But now, the truth hit me with the force of a freight train. Adrenaline surged through me. My military training kicked in instantly. I knew how to think, how to act in dangerous situations. I wasn't just a father, I was a man who had been betrayed, and I was going to make sure there would be hell to pay for it. I could feel the heat of fury building inside me as I stormed back to my car. The drive home was a blur of rage and heartbreak. How could she do this to me? How could she betray the life we'd built, the family we had created? I reached the house. It was dark, the living room lights casting shadows across the floor. I could hear their voices, muffled but unmistakable. Rick's low laugh. Laura's soothing tone. I clenched my fists. They didn't know I was home. I slipped through the back door, careful, calculated. The kitchen light was on, and I could hear glasses clinking, the sound of a bottle being opened. My blood boiled. I moved quietly, following the sounds up the stairs to the bedroom. The door was cracked open. I peered through. There they were, my wife, the woman I had loved, tangled in the sheets with Rick. They were laughing, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit them. I didn't wait. I slammed the door open with enough force to shake the entire frame. They froze. The silence was deafening. "Surprised to see me?" I growled. Laura's face turned pale. Rick stood, his eyes flashing with panic. "It's not what you think, man," Rick started, but I wasn't listening. I was too consumed by the fury building inside me. I advanced toward them, my chest heaving. You think you can get away with this? I spat, my voice thick with anger. You think you can betray me like this, and just walk away? David, please. Laura's voice quivered, but I wasn't having it. She had destroyed me. I didn't want to hear her excuses. The next days were a blur of calculation. I wasn't just going to let this go. No, I would make them pay. I watched Laura, my wife, as she pleaded for forgiveness. But this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about justice. I began with Rick. He was a man who had always been proud, always flaunting his wealth and power. He thought he was untouchable. But I knew his weakness. I knew how he had built his empire, on lies and dirty dealings. I had spent years watching, learning, and now it was time to strike. I anonymously sent the authorities the evidence of his illicit business dealings. His empire began to crumble. The weight of the scandal was unbearable. He lost everything: his job, his reputation, his money. As for Laura, she couldn't escape the damage either. I exposed her affair to everyone: family, friends, even her colleagues. She was humiliated, stripped of her dignity. I watched her from a distance as she crumbled under the pressure, begging for mercy, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The day of reckoning came. I stood at the edge of the chaos I had unleashed. The man who had walked into that bedroom, vulnerable and heartbroken, was no longer the same. I had been broken by their betrayal, but now I was whole again. In a way, I had rebuilt myself. Rebuild my strength. Laura begged me for forgiveness, but the words rang hollow. She had destroyed what we had, and no amount of begging would change that. She was nothing to me now. Rick. He was a shell of the man he used to be. Stripped of everything he had once held dear. His fall from grace was swift and brutal. As I stood there looking at the wreckage, I realized one thing: I was no longer the man I used to be. Some betrayals don't break us. They build us into something stronger. It's funny, isn't it? The way people think they can get away with things. That they can betray and hurt others without consequence. But life has a way of balancing things out, doesn't it? Some of us learn the hard way. Some of us change not because we want to, but because we have to. And when the dust settles, we are left standing not as the same person, but as someone stronger, more powerful, and unstoppable. Justice had been served. Like this story, if you believe in justice and revenge for betrayal. Subscribe for more stories of heartbreak, vengeance, and redemption.